हमारा आज का टॉपिक है चैलेंज टू बाइपोलैरिटी। हमने पहले भी इस बारे में बात की है थोड़ी सी ब्रीफली। एंड चैलेंज टू बाइपोलैरिटी का मतलब हियर वी आर गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट NAM एक्चुअली, and why we say that this NAM was a challenge to bipolarity. The reason was that as we already discussed that in the Cold War the whole world got divided into two blocks. One was led by USA and the other one was led by USSR, and since it was divided into two halves, that is the reason we call it bipolar. Means the world which was divided into bi means two, into two poles. Now the biggest challenge which came to this bipolar world, where the world was getting divided into two halves. One was led by the capitalist economy of USA and the other one was led by USSR. USSR's communist and socialist model. The biggest challenge was NAM. NAM, non-aligned movement. Right? Now, why this came into being? Because at that point of time when this Cold War started, there were certain newly emerging countries, newly independent countries who were actually under the colonial clutches, who were controlled by colonial powers like the French and the Britishers, like India was one of them, and certain other countries of Africa and Latin America. They were the new players which were coming in the world. Now these new players which came in the world politics, they never wanted to get into this power rivalry which was going on between USA and USSR. And they wanted that they should focus on their development, and they could not afford simply to get into this arms race or to get into this military build-ups. So for that matter, this organization NAM, which is called the non-aligned movement, it's simply from the term itself, it's very clear that they were not ready to ally with any of the superpowers, right? So this movement started, and the credit to initiate this movement greatly goes to Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and there was a good friendship between Jawaharlal Nehru and Yugoslavia's Joseph Broz Tito. Now, because of the friendship of these two people, they actually came up with this idea that there should be a third platform where these newly emerged countries who were actually devastated, broken, and being ruled by colonial powers for centuries, they were in a very bad shape. So they wanted that these countries should come together and should stay away from this power rivalry and should focus on their own development, right? So the root of NAM goes to, as I already mentioned, friendship between Nehru and Yugoslavia's leader Joseph Broz Tito, and another person, prominent person, was Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser. They all met in 1956 and discussed probably the idea of coming up with this kind of an organization. And later on, these two people were also helped by Indonesia's Sukarno and Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah. These five people actually, and these five countries can be called as the founding members of NAM. These five people actually are the real flag bearers of this movement, you may say, NAM. The first meeting of NAM held in 1961, right? And the main objective of non-aligned movement, as already being discussed, was cooperation amongst these countries. Then there was growing Cold War tension. One superpower or the other actually was pursuing or at times pressurizing these newly independent countries to join any of their allies. Then since there were so many new entries into the world politics, all these nations, they were not ready to afford any kind of confrontation. So they wanted another or a third option for themselves. So these were the main objective why this NAM came into being, right? And the first meeting of NAM was attended by 25 member states. That happened, as already mentioned, in the year 1961. And the last, or the latest, as you may say, 19th summit of NAM was held in the year 2019, recently, at Azerbaijan. Now, when we talk about this organization, NAM, it was not a kind of homogeneous organization where one particular type of state or states were coming together. There were different states with different mindset, with different philosophies, with different, backgrounds. They were coming together. So we can say this was a less homogeneous organization. And when we try to define NAM, it becomes very difficult. So it is very easy when we talk about NAM or we try to explain NAM, it becomes very easy that what NAM is not. You may say that negatively it is very easy to explain NAM rather than, in a positive manner when we try to explain NAM. So what NAM is not. First thing, it is being alleged that NAM was a kind of a policy of isolationism. Right, it is being alleged, and perhaps it is being criticized also for this matter, that it was a policy of isolationism. So actually isolationism means aloofness. Maybe you may say that staying away from any kind of confrontations or any kind of any kind of situation which is actually confronted in the world politics. So NAM is actually, what we can say is that it is not the policy of isolationism. Then another thing which we can say about NAM is that it was also not the policy of neutrality. And what does neutrality mean? It is actually means that staying away or staying out of power. Whenever there is confrontation, if one country opts to stay away from the confrontation and not ready to help or psychologically or support the cause or oppose the cause, that what we can say is neutrality. So NAM is not isolationism, at the same time it is also not neutrality. So what does actually NAM is? So NAM is a kind of a platform which gave freedom to the newly independent countries to pursue their foreign policy the way they wanted. And you can very well understand and make out that when the world was going into this arms race and this power alliance which was going on between US and USSR, at that point of time, those countries which were actually recently have got their independence, they could not afford war. So that is the reason that NAM came into being. NAM members also played a very significant role in reducing the conflict between the two superpowers. Like we already had discussed in the previous lectures, that whenever there was a confrontation or Cold War in the arenas of Cold War, Nehru played a very significant role in lessening or reducing the conflict, the tension between the two superpowers. So NAM that way also played a very, very important role. So that's it for today. I hope that this topic will help you in understanding what NAM is. Another thing which I want to mention here is that why I am stressing so much on these topics very briefly, because I understand that you haven't done international politics in class 11. This is one of the reasons that I am going a bit easy and in detail in explaining these topics. Another way which I actually have quoted so many times in my class, that how you can understand this Cold War. See, Cold War is a kind of a situation where you can say if you take an example of a village, right? There was a kind of a conflict in a village probably, and there were two gundas of the village, A and B, and they started fighting with each other, and one of them, used a automatic weapon against the other. In that situation, the other one was terrified because Gaonwalas cannot afford automatic weapons. So you can equate this automatic weapon to the atom bombs dropped by America on Japan. And the other one, which was terrified, the other group, you may in a way take the example of USSR. Now there were certain small children in the village who were going to school and who were very young, who could not afford this kind of conflict. They opted to stay away from this group which actually started building up between these two superpowers, and because they wanted their development, their education, their development. So you can equate them with NAM. So that way you can understand them. Thank you so much for today, and stay at your homes and take care of yourself. Thank you so much.